Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time we weren't watching Classic, but we were watching The Doctor's Wife. What all happened on that episode?
Oh, that was a lot of fun. Somebody essentially kidnaps Doctor Who and the TARDIS and his companions and takes them outside of the known universe, but then takes the spirit of the TARDIS, the heart, the soul, the mind of the TARDIS, and puts it into an actual human person, and then they bicker like old married people do. But it was a lot of fun. Very well written. I thought, again, sets and costumes and everything was just outstanding. And I have to say, again, I don't know if I said this last time, but I'm very much a fan of this new 1 hour format. You know, not having to sit through 3 and 4 hours of the old Who when we do them in half-hour segments. I do like the idea that it's, one and done. So
yeah. Well, we're not doing that for a while.
But these are going to be fun because these are the specials.
Yes, these are the anniversary specials. Today we're going to be starting with the 10th anniversary special, which is The Three Doctors, which is also Season 10, Episode 1. So this should... Three Doctors, this is in the middle of Pertwee's era. So this is... I believe this is already after the 2 Pertwee episodes we've seen. So
Okay.
So the last time we saw him was Curse of Peladon. The last time we saw Troughton was The Web of Fear. And then the last time...
Is that the one with the exploding Yeti or something?
Yes.
Okay.
And the last time we saw Hartnell was Episode 3, The Edge of Destruction. So this will be interesting to see Hartnell without his companions. Or I guess all 3 of them without their companions.
Now, Edge of Destruction, is that the one where they learned that the TARDIS was alive?
Yes.
Okay.
That was that episode.
Okay. So, been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. It's been actually 6 weeks since we've reacted to a classic Doctor episode. And the last one we did was Earthshock. And then after that, we did the 3 audios, and then... Oh, no, wait. No, it's been 7 weeks. We did 3 audios, we did the animated episode, and then we did 3 modern episodes.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah. Those 7 weeks flew by, though, I will say.
So that was sometime around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that was a while ago. How time flies.
I've started a new semester at school.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, but... We're getting back to the classics, and we're getting back to classic reactions.
Yay!
So, we might as well get right into this episode of Classic Doctor Who.
Okay. Now, just a question.
Yes.
By 1973, they've obviously gone to color. It's not still in black and white like Hartnell's stuff was.
Yeah.
All right. Is Hartnell actually in this, or is it somebody who's playing Hartnell's doctor?
I think, from what I don't know too much about this, but I think... It is him, but I think he has a very limited role in it. And it's mostly Troughton and Pertwee. But that's really all I know. Yeah. So, and that I'm not quite sure. But I think it is still him. I think they got him like one last time, basically. So, now next week we'll be watching The 5 Doctors. So that'll be in Davison's era. I'm pretty sure he wasn't around then. So that would be 83.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, he would have been very old by that time.
Yeah, so... but we'll have to see. It'll be interesting to see what role he even has in this.
In fact, by 73, I was already in college and heavily involved in theater, which is why I wasn't watching television much. But again, as far as I know, I never saw Doctor Who out in Arizona when I went to college. It wasn't until I came here to Oklahoma. I was in Norman, Oklahoma for a couple of years. And again, they did it Saturday night on PBS about 10:30. So I occasionally got to watch it. I had a very good friend of mine, Sandy Williams, who used to watch it a lot. So whenever we were waiting around to go to the midnight showings of some of our favorite shows at the theater, we'd watch Doctor Who before that.
And you said that was the 4th Doctor by that point, right?
Yeah, it was Tom Baker.
Yeah, so... he'll be in the next one.
Okay.
So, all right. We might as well get right into this episode of Doctor Who Classic. Here we go.
Okay. Minsbridge Wildlife Sanctuary, Warden's Lodge. English countryside is full of little rivers and weirs like that. I used to love doing just walking down by those. We don't have those here. Out here in the Midwest, it's just way too dry.
Well,
Mrs. Dolly says her husband's down there. I see him wave, get there, and there he is, gone.
oh, I guess it would make
So
sense
I got in
that
touch
Joe would
with
still
you
be
lot.
there too.
Well, quite right, too. That's what we're here for.
I think you'll find everything you need here.
Oh, right. Thanks.
Did I show you that picture of me where I look a lot like the Brigadier?
I don't know.
Oh. Again, right about this time, early 70s, I was playing Sir Wilfrid Robards in Agatha Christie's Witness for the Prosecution. Had my hair cut short and a little clipped mustache. And
Oh, I can manage now, thank you.
that can't be good.
Whatever that is.
Cosmic hamster.
I guess.
Sure.
No. No, it's not important.
He actually has the sonic
I'll be
screwdriver.
getting on that.
Now, did that car not have a top they could put up?
Apparently not. Although it does see it in the curled over the back there.
Yeah.
But it's a sewer rat.
Oh, Moses! What's that? Get Sergeant Benton, quick!
Oh no.
How many of them?
They are a little freaky.
Sarge. They seem to be springing out all over the place. Right, you hold them off here. I'll cover the back. And you men, come with me.
So they still haven't upgraded their crazy villains. They're like the exploding Yeti. Oh no. It's like Pizza the Hut.
Oh, I was just thinking that.
Is this Gallifrey?
I guess?
A force in the universe of antimatter.
But that's too terrible to contemplate.
He can help himself.
Oh, this is how.
Show me the Doctor's time stream, the section for his earlier self before he changed his form.
Well, properly speaking, it's a recorder.
Thank you.
Nice.
Wondering
Yeah.
where it got to. You haven't been trying to play this, have you? Oh, I can see you've been doing the TARDIS up a bit. I don't like it.
Well, it's a bit difficult to explain, Joe.
He's not one of them, is he?
Well, not so much one of them as one of us. One of me, to be precise.
Oh, no. I'm sorry, my dear.
Please, you're only confusing my assistant. Joe, it's all quite simple. I am he, and he is me.
And we
And
are
we are
all
all
together.
together,
Good,
yes.
did you? Sound like Beatles.
How does he go?
Oh, please be quiet.
Look, is he really you?
Yes, I'm afraid so.
Contact. Contact.
Gallifreyan mind meld.
Oh, well, since out of that, show me the earliest Doctor.
Him too, so I'm sorry.
Show me. He'll keep them in order.
Well, you've been fiddling with it,
That's
haven't you?
funny.
It was perfectly all right until you touched it.
Ah, there you are. I seem to be stuck up here. Hmm? Oh, so you're my replacements. A dandy and a clown.
Wait!
You failed him again.
I did not
Yes,
think
you
you
certainly
saw
did.
it.
Yes,
Wait a
you
minute.
I have to ask. But who was that?
Me.
Me!
Doctor, no!
Trap it back.
See if they do both of them. Yep.
Yeah. And. Yep. They just keep all three as the same credit.
Okay. Well, that's fun.
I love that the two of them don't get along. Because that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting that, he kind of has to go back to his younger self for more wisdom. That seems kind of odd. It's like, you wouldn't when you go to your older self. But no, he was wiser when he was younger.
Kind of interesting, too, that didn't Troughton leave on, not in the greatest terms?
I don't know anything behind the scenes, but I mean, in the story itself, I'm pretty sure it's a forced regeneration.
Yeah.
So I have no idea.
Okay, I was just wondering, because I remember that he was forced to regenerate, and I was just wondering if they were forcing the actor off and making him do that so that the third one can come in. But anyway, yeah, it's still brilliant idea.
Yeah. It's also interesting that whatever they're dealing with, something to do with like antimatter in its own antimatter universe existing now in our universe. It's like, I swear we just watched this on Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Well, we also just watched, wasn't it part of the Doctor's Wife? You know, the alternate universe or the outside of the universe. So.
That's true.
So.
Yeah, could partly be that.
Yeah.
I will say it was a little difficult writing notes. Like so far, I have like goo, beasts, and a crossover. That's all I've written so far. So, but we might as well get into part 2.
Might as well.
And hopefully,
But
John doesn't bark.
I enjoy the humor. That's something
Yeah.
that a lot of the later ones seemed to miss. You know, and maybe it's just because they're, you know, I don't want to say classically trained actors, but the more mature actors can handle both the drama and the comedy. The younger actors didn't seem to be able to handle the comedy all that well. So.
And I was curious how they were going to get the crossover. Because it's like, yeah, this is not something that the Doctor just does, you know, cross his own time stream like that. So it's interesting that the Time Lords, the only person they could spare was just him. So.
Fascinating. Heaven save me, careful, Doctor! No, Brigadier, leave it alone! It's not dangerous for the moment. It seems to think it's achieved its mission.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
But you're not the...
Yes.
In that case, you better consult those all-powerful superiors of yours for their advice.
Oh, I don't think that'll do any good. At the moment, they're far from being all-powerful. That's why it's been left up to me and me and me.
I mean, it's technically just him, and number one's just out there.
Well, what are we going to do now?
Keep it confused. Feed it with useless information. I wonder if I have a television set handy.
There's a lot of useless information.
Well,
That's the lab equipment.
oh yeah.
So this is what you've been doing with unit funds and equipment all this time. How's it done? Some sort of optical illusion?
Oh, no. They come like this, ready.
Yeah.
Hey, Doc, let's go berserk out there.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
All right, now we're in here. What do we do?
Well, we have a think. Careful, Jelly Baby.
That sets up Tom Baker, doesn't he? Isn't he the one with the jelly babies?
Well,
On a stable world in a universe of antimatter. An anomaly within an impossibility.
this even looks like where they fought the Anti-Monitor too.
I'm sorry.
But these things sound very much like the creatures that attacked us at Unit HQ.
Yeah.
What exactly do they look like?
Why, that.
Well, the entire place is gooey.
Looks like Aladdin's cave.
Like a chewed up jelly
The
belly.
entrance to some sort of palace, actually.
Oh, I give up.
With respect, sir, we're wasting time.
Yes, we are.
How odd.
You're
He's
still
using a
worried
real
about your other Doctor,
screwdriver.
Sergeant?
Oh, yes, I am. I'm Miss Grant.
Well, I shouldn't worry too much if I were you. In fact, I rather envy them.
You what?
Yes, I think they're having a very interesting time. The time to make a getaway is now.
I mean, he'll catch up to it someday.
Corporal Palmer here, over.
Well, first turn off your force field.
What? But I don't...
Off, I said.
But I still don't see...
Oh, use your intelligence.
Who in the name of heaven was that?
I'm afraid you'd never believe me.
Oops.
Oh, man, I'm starting to feel the 4 parts again.
Yeah. Well, now again, and we've said this about Classic Who before, the whole professor trying to escape, that probably took up 3 or 4 minutes. It's padding.
That could have been cut, definitely, but...
And so, yeah, they're trying to extend this to 4 episodes, but it's very obvious that this could have been done, well, we'll hopefully see in 3 or maybe even 2. But yeah, it's just, it's a fun story, great performances, but yeah, they had to, it's like kneading the dough. It just gets thinner and thinner the more you roll it out.
Yeah, I honestly didn't expect a second scene with Hartnell. I thought that was interesting. It was like, oh, well, I guess they just had him in the chair. Let's just see if we can keep giving him lines. Yeah. And he definitely does look older. Yeah. Now, honestly, part of that may be he is in color now. So it's like, he doesn't look all black and white. Maybe that makes him look a little older. Color adds 10 years. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, he definitely is looking older.
Yeah.
So, and again, it is interesting that the second Doctor goes back to his younger self for the advice, where it's like, but how could he give you advice? You've been him before, you know? Which it's the same thing with, like, you know, the second Doctor being jealous of going to the antimatter universe. It's like, well, you give it a few hundred years, you'll catch up to where that is, and you'll be him. And you will look back, and you'll still be pissed at yourself. So, all right, we might as well move on to part 3.
Like Wizard of Oz, what if the gigantic house there drops down on somebody?
Yeah. Well, it would be interesting, like all the lab equipment, to just see that house. Like, I don't know, I don't think you can rebuild that house in that wasteland.
The legends of your people, I am called Omega.
Omega? That's impossible. Omega was destroyed.
No, Brother Time Lord. I was not destroyed. As you can see,
I became a fish.
take the man and the girl.
Where do you take them?
They will not be
So-
harmed, Doctor.
Very similar to the Mask of Agamemnon.
Look!
Possible.
So why does that one have a stair and the other ones don't?
I don't know.
Notice he had to step up and then step down into the room.
Yeah, I was wondering that.
Creature in the mud.
I was to be the one to find and create the power source that would give us mastery over time itself.
You succeeded. All my life I've known of you and honored you as our greatest hero.
But hero, I should have been a god!
The creature, bring the doctor.
So I guess he must have
The enemies.
created the Eye of Harmony then.
Unless he means him some terrible harm.
Come along, Joe. Pull yourself together. No point in getting worried.
And I
about
assume
it.
he's also the Omega of the Hand of Omega. So,
That stuff must have found the TARDIS a bit indigestible even without the force field on, so it swallowed a bit of the surrounding matter as well. Rather
To
like
wash it down.
taking a pill with a swig of water.
So you think we've moved, is that it, Doc?
Oh, I'm quite sure we have.
Bloody hell.
Just a matter of the same country, sir. The Doctor's right, we're not even in the same universe.
What? Oh, nonsense, Bet, and I tell you that's a beach out there. It's probably in Norfolk or somewhere like that.
Oh, please, if you'd only listen
Right,
to me.
now, I'll tell you what we'll do.
I do kind of feel bad for the Brigadier. Just can't wrap his mind around it.
Overrun with holidaymakers.
I'd like to see the blobs get down those stairs.
Well,
But you will fight the dark side of my mind. The dark side of my mind.
Oh yes, this is the Doctor with the martial arts skills.
well. I was gonna say when we first saw it, it's like, oh well, shouldn't the second Doctor be in there too? It's like, oh wait, Pertwee's got to fight. It's not his greatest fight.
No.
They just keep flipping each other.
Gallifreyan Jiu-Jitsu.
Those who oppose the will of Omega shall not live. Destroy him!
Alrighty, and that's part 3. Okay. We ought to move on to part 4 then.
Yeah, I'm thinking this easily could have been 3 parts at the most.
Yeah.
There's just, again, it's not incredibly obvious padding, but they're trying to make this into a 4-parter. I will say the storyline, though, is reminiscent of Wrath of Khan. This, of course, would have come first. But, the idea that here's this guy who's been stranded out there and forgotten about for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And now he's going to, take his vengeance out on everyone.
And what he's doing could rip apart the fabric of the universe. Where have we seen that with antimatter before? But instead of DC characters, it's the Doctor. 3 times over.
It will be interesting to see if we get Hartnell in something other than, if he actually does show up in person, so that we really see the 3 of them together right at the end.
It would be funny, though, if he shows up and he just sits down. It's like, all right, you 2 go at the forefront. I'll back you up, but I'm gonna sit here.
Yeah.
You 2 deal with that. Karate guy, you go. Dandy and the Clown. It makes me curious how they're going to deal when there's 5 of them running around.
One thing about this opening, Pertwee's hair is very calm in the opening here.
Yeah.
And we never see it like that again.
Yeah.
I have to admit, though, that's great hair. My hair, unfortunately, tends to be more like Troughton's, but I wish it was more like Pertwee's.
All this exists because you have willed singularity to create it all for you.
Exactly. I say, you mean all you've got to do is to think of a thing, rub your magic lamp over there, and shalabby-gallammy-zoop, there it is. That's jolly clever. That's jolly clever.
Are you sure that you and he are of the same intent?
You couldn't run me up a quick recorder, could you? It's a little thing about this long withholding.
I will tell you of the task that
Well,
lies
it's not much
before
to
you.
ask, a small recorder.
Silence! And that is your task. To take over my burden so that I may escape.
Oh, Atlas and Hercules.
Well.
Why are the aliens always such horrible shots?
Well?
Corrosion has already done its work.
What?
You exist only because your will insists that you exist. But your will is all that is left of you.
Interesting.
The sound of infinite sorrow.
TARDIS coming in! Into the TARDIS! Quickly!
Come on, Brigadier, inside, inside.
If only I could find my recorder, I could play you a little something to pass the time.
We must be thankful for small mercies.
Well, this time...
Let's get on with it, eh?
On with what?
Putting our heads together and finding a solution. Ready?
Ready? Ready? Contact?
Contact.
What's all that about, Miss Grant?
Another telepathic conference, I think.
That old chap.
Afraid so.
3 of them. I didn't know when I was well off. Doctor! Dr. Benson?
Shouldn't the girl go first? Soldiers go last?
This is my world! I obey commands! And you pester me with trinkets! Run!
TARDIS!
I told you he had no self-control.
By the skin of our teeth. Where's Mr. Ollis? What? Where's Mr. Ollis?
Oh, back where he came from, I imagine. So there you are.
Now I've seen it all.
Eddie, you're so sweet.
Yes, wasn't I?
Excuse me, sir, but if anything is missing, where do we say it's gone?
Come along, Benton.
And where do you think you've been, Arthur Hollis? I've been worried sick about you, I have. Everybody's been searching. Where have you been? Soldiers looking for you? You didn't come home for your dinner? Well?
You'd never believe me, woman. Supper ready?
Okay.
All right, well, again, the thing that carries all of that is the fact that they don't take themselves so seriously.
Yeah.
You know, the humor is absolutely essential to getting through a story like that. But yeah, I mean, we do again see the thread of where all this seems to be going. I mean, going back to Omega and the Hand of Omega and the Eye of Harmony and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Again, could have been shortened to at least 3 episodes. I mean, with some good editing, they could have gotten it probably down to 2. You know, because that's an hour-long story.
Yeah. It's interesting at the end there, them giving him a new dematerialization circuit. So this leads into now the Doctor's allowed to go back into space, which he really hasn't done in this era because he had his exile to Earth. That's interesting, especially because, you know, this involved the Doctor that they had to exile, you know? So, that was definitely interesting. So this would lead him back into space and then eventually lead into his regeneration to the 4th Doctor.
Now, from this point, does he go back into space? Do we know that? Have you read enough about it to know it?
I think, yeah. So the first season or 2, I think, of Pertwee, he's on Earth and he's just with UNIT. And then I think his final season, either his final season or his final 2 seasons, he goes back into space. And he will eventually take on Sarah Jane as a companion. And then that's when he regenerates.
Now, is Peladon before this or after this?
Before, actually.
All right, so how did they... I've forgotten how they got...
It was that... Because this entire time he tries to fix the TARDIS himself. And that just happened to be... You know, he was running a test flight and they ended up on Peladon.
Okay. All right.
So... But still, I would imagine that's a once-in-a-while thing they can do.
Yeah.
So, this was definitely interesting, having the 3 of them there. Even though it was mainly focused on 2 and 3, we did get a bit of Hartnell in there as well.
It would have been nice, though, if they could have somehow physically gotten the 3 of them together.
Yeah, it would have. But, I mean, I guess this... I think this is the last thing that Hartnell did for Doctor Who. I don't think it's going to be him in the next one.
No, I wouldn't suspect it would be.
Yeah.
Especially if it's 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
He would have been, you know, in his late 70s or 80s or something by that time. And
yeah.
If he was in bad health the first time around, that seemed... And I do seem to recall seeing some clips of the 5 Doctors where it's obviously another actor, but who is made up and dressed to look like him.
Yeah. So... Which, that's fine. At a point, you got to do that if you want to bring the first Doctor back. All right. Well, we may as well head into the notes. Oh, boy. So the first thing I wrote down was the goo. The sort of antimatter goo. That was interesting and definitely an interesting effect. Some of the effects in here, it's like, okay, I can see what they were trying to do here.
And again, you have to understand, for 1973, that's not too bad. What I again continually do not understand, especially since we had seen other science fiction TV series in the United States, is how does someone look at that, animated jelly bean, that, walking raspberry, and say that is in any way, shape, or form threatening? That's just there's too many ways you can make that. I guess the proper word is anthropomorphic, because obviously when they move, they're having to move again, very much like the Daleks, just shuffling along like that.
Yeah.
They have a claw, a lobster claw for a hand, or a crab claw or something like that. But they only seem to have one of them, and the crab claw doesn't do any actual crab claw pinching. It shoots lasers that never seem to hit their target.
Yeah,
so that's the biggest flaw, in my opinion, in this entire story, is that the whatever those were could have been made much scarier.
Yeah, because
if you're going to will control, this entire universe into existence, surely you can come up with something better than a half crab, half jelly bean.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious they wanted to differentiate it from any other monsters, but it's like even like the Yetis were a little bit better than that. These ones were just odd. And it also is a problem that, obviously there's a guy in there who has to move around, but that seemed like a very constricting outfit. Now, by comparison, I thought the guy that was in the Omega suit, I thought he was really animated.
Yeah.
Like, he really worked within that, and then that voice came through, which was a really great voice. So the two of them, I don't know if it was the same person. I will kind of think it wasn't, because we never saw his face. So whoever was in that costume really, he was getting around, So...
well, that's very similar to what George Lucas did with Darth Vader. Have an actor who is very tall and very agile to be able to play, in that suit, but yet had James Earl Jones do the voice.
Right.
So yeah, you're right there. It's just that worked very well. I thought he was an excellent villain.
Yeah.
And again, not only an animated body, but not an overly villainous type voice. I mean, you honestly saw, here's a guy in here who's literally gone crazy for thousands of years because this world that he has made, he can't get out of. It's I don't know if you've ever read the novel of Catch-22. It's like, you can only do this if you did this, but you can't do this. So if you can't do that, you'll never be able to do that. So
yeah. Let's see. The next thing I wrote down was the antimatter. So this whole world that he lives in is this sort of antimatter universe where he is sort of, he's sort of the master of this antimatter universe, and he has all of his minions, and we have to do a little crossover in order to defeat this guy. Now, this is the 70s, and we just watched Crisis on Infinite Earths, which he does not speak for me. I loved Crisis.
I was disappointed. For all of the build-up, it fizzled out in the last episode, to me, personally.
Well, and we'll not to tangent into Crisis, but I feel like they shouldn't have split them up over a month. They should have put all 5 back to back. Because then, if you watch all 5 of them in a row, I think it's better, because Part 4 is clearly the climax, and Part 5 is supposed to be the epilogue.
Yeah.
But the problem is, now in January, you start with Part 4, and it's like, if you put all 5 of them together, it might honestly be a little better.
Yeah.
Anyway, so... But yes, I just thought that was interesting. It's like, we just watched this.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. Hey, if that's how we get the 2 doctors to cross over, 3 doctors to cross over. I keep forgetting that, like, oh yeah, this is called the 3 doctors, and they just barely get it in there to get that title. So,
2.5 doctors.
Yeah, it's 2 doctors and a monitor, basically. So yeah, that was
Sounds
interesting.
like a bad situation comedy. Two doctors and a monitor.
And it's also interesting. It's like, you would kind of think like, okay, well, what threat could be big enough to bring in another doctor? And having it be Omega did make sense, because I was kind of thinking, like, especially when he like first showed up, or they first sort of alluded to him, I was like, I don't know, maybe it's the Master, and I was like, well, that would be interesting. But going with Omega, and it's like, okay, this is like the original Time Lord, basically.
Yeah.
That made a lot of sense to do that.
And now again, I don't know exactly how it shifts back and forth through the currents of time, but we see the Time Lords in Deadly Assassin? Wasn't that their home planet? And yet those Time Lords seem very different from the ones here. I mean, completely different kinds of costumes and completely different kind of setting. So obviously at different times throughout the great eras or epochs or whatever. But I have to say, and again, not that Tom Baker's would have been more than 3 or 4 years later than this, but the Time Lords, to me, the Time Lords in the Tom Baker series, to me, visually made a much more impressive thing. These guys, not so much. Costumes were okay, but they weren't as impressive to me as the ones in Tom Baker's.
They were lacking like the giant thing that goes behind their heads, which that's the thing is because we're watching these out of order right now, is that we don't know the progression of seeing the Time Lords, which I think the earliest point that we've seen the Time Lords was in I guess it was what was it called? Terror of the Autons. Yeah. It was the first Pertwee episode that we saw. But I think that was just a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
And then the Master has also kind of got that same thing going on. But yeah, we haven't really seen too much of Gallifrey itself other than in The Deadly Assassin and now in this. Yeah. And I guess you could say it's also, like, you could argue it's just a different division of, like, on Gallifrey, because they were more like the political stuff, and whereas this was more like the core of the Time Lords.
Tech support.
Time Lord tech support. And something I wrote down was they said something about protecting, like it will destroy everything that the Time Lords are meant to protect. I thought that was an interesting line, because it's like, do the Time Lords do anything? Like, that's the thing. It's like, do the Time Lords protect things? Like, I don't know. I've never really heard that they do that. Because I always thought they were these observers. They're
watchers, observers.
Yeah, and it's the Doctor that's different.
But well, yeah. I don't know. Maybe they were going with the idea that in case something goes wrong, that they would be there to prevent the Daleks acquiring time travel, or somebody else doing that, so that if that did happen, they would be there to be sure that everything went the way it was supposed to go. Again, I don't know.
It could be something like that. Like, they're more maybe more just protecting the timeline, but it's not exactly the same as what the Doctor does. Like, I guess they would be for more larger scale threats, like Omega. So it could be that. That just struck me a little bit. It's like, do you guys even do anything? So, I wrote down the first Doctor was just advising. So that is a shame that we couldn't. 'Cause even if you could have just like gotten him, like, just again sitting in that same chair, he's just in the background, and you could even write it in. It's like, well, he doesn't really want to do too much. He's just gonna sit there and he's gonna let the other two.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing is, honestly, like, while we got great interactions between 2 and 3, and the fact that they don't really like each other, so they're constantly butting heads, we didn't get too much between the two of them and the first Doctor.
Yeah.
And especially because, he only had such limited screen time. And then the fact that this was also kind of interesting that, they, like, completely respect him as, just being their predecessor and stuff, whereas the two of them don't really respect each other. They're constantly bickering and stuff.
To me, the relations seemed like they looked on the Hartnell character almost like a father, but on each other like brothers. I mean, let's face it, you and your brother act like that sometimes.
That's true.
But the other relationship is the two of you and me is very much like what they were doing with Hartnell there. I mean, it's just, here's the guy who has been here before, he's done it all, so whatever he says, we'll go with it.
Yeah, but we give you crap too.
Yes, they do.
Which maybe that's the thing is that if Hartnell was there, then we could have gotten some banter back and forth. But then we don't know how much he could have done. Like I almost wonder if it's like, okay, his health was already having issues. That's why he left the show in the first place. So I almost wonder if how they wrote him there, they just wrote him, he's just, sitting in this thing, and, it's like, he just has his lines in front of him. It's like, just say your lines, we'll get it on film, and then you're in there.
Yeah.
It's like, how much could they have done?
But it also, to me, it goes to show how brilliant they were later on to find simply another actor to play the character the way Hartnell played it and the way Hartnell looked. I mean, that makes perfect sense. That if you've got a doctor who supposedly is flying around through time, even though he's different generations, having somebody come back like that is just it should be it's shocking and yet unique to see. Oh, wait a minute, there's the guy that we saw 20 years ago, and I know that the average viewer would say, well, that's not William Hartnell, but still, the fact that he looks like William Hartnell, he talks and acts like William Hartnell, you go, oh, that's really cool. That's just such a great idea.
Yeah. So that would be interesting if, because like we've said, next week we're doing the 5 Doctors. It would be interesting to see, if they, I'm sure they recast him. It would be interesting to see more interaction. Because, I mean, first off, it's going to be fun just to watch the interactions between all 5 of them, but then to get more of his interaction with the others. That would also be interesting.
Is the 5 Doctors also a 4-parter or longer? Do we know?
Oh, I don't know. I know... Let's find out real quick. Let's see. No, it's just all one thing.
Is it just 1 hour?
I don't know that. I have no idea how long it is, but from what we can see, it just seems to be one clip. So
that's cool.
All right. Means I won't have to get up and keep turning off the camera. Let's see. I wrote down the 2nd Doctor had to kind of be the assistant, which they did, they joked about as like the Brigadier having to say, it's like, oh, I said that you're his assistant, basically. But the two of them, they did really like kind of have equal like things to do. It didn't focus on the 3rd Doctor because, it's his era. He's, the main character right now. It did sort of give them equal things to do.
Yeah. And by the way, the thing with the flute, the fact that they set that up very early, and it never occurred to me that was going to be part of the solution to this whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just that was, again, it seemed like that was perfectly in character for him. Here's a guy who says, I always get nervous and I like to use my flute. And then when they realize, oh, wait a minute, this is our possible way out. The only thing that then I thought, I didn't spoil it, but it was not up to what they should have done, is, again, the rather childish-looking contraption. And I realized they were trying to provoke Omega into destroying it, but still, I thought that it could have looked a little more scientific, and again, so that he, again, I don't know, if I were Omega and I saw something as childish as that, I would say, that's got to be, there's something wrong there. You two brilliant guys come up with this piece of crap. So, to me, it should have looked a lot more scientific and more threatening, so that he can say, no, this is wrong, I can't do it. But anyway, that's just a minor thing. So.
But at the same time, if he said that, then they could fire back at him for his monster lobster jelly bean things.
Yeah.
It's like I don't think you're in any place to judge us for what we create. So
lobster jelly beans.
It was interesting, especially because like the interior of like his palace seemed to be the same sort of material, and it's like, okay, you're really sticking to a look here. it's just weird.
Yeah.
So, I wrote down Omega again. Great villain. They didn't bring up the hand, but then again, I don't know how far, like at what point does the hand of Omega become a thing, or if it's only a thing in Remembrance of the Daleks, and that's all the way to year 25 at that point. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure how that tied in. I almost like when he walked in and it was like, oh, he's Omega. I was kind of looking to see if he only had one hand, but it's not his literal hand. So, but yeah, it was interesting, and I like his design was also interesting, and the helmet that just like kept going. It's like I wonder if that was only just to make him taller.
Yeah, I think so, because again, first of all, he was a very substantial sized man, much bigger than Troughton was, but of course Pertwee is too. But yeah, and then oddly enough, when he turned around, the back side of it was very much that samurai and almost the back of Darth Vader's type helmet thing. But yeah, so you got the mask of Agamemnon with fish features on the front, and then the samurai on the back. So I don't know. It's just it's very impressive.
Yeah, and it's also interesting. When you look at Pertwee and Troughton next to each other, it's like Pertwee is very clearly a foot taller than Troughton, which was interesting. Of course, if you got Hartnell in there, he'd probably only be around as tall as Troughton too, probably. Yeah. So, of course,
he was not a tall man.
Yeah, and of course, if he was there, I would imagine they would have just kept him in a chair. So there, you got like a stepladder of the three of them. So,
and considering that, especially there at the end when Troughton disappeared, it would have been easy just to have Hartnell appear in a chair and stay there the entire time, and then disappear at the end. So again, there are obviously reasons why they didn't do that. Yeah. But it's kind of sad that they weren't able to actually use him.
I feel like with the way that they shot his scenes, I almost wonder, like, maybe one reason they couldn't put him on set is how much could he remember his lines, because you got Troughton and Pertwee, they're going a million miles an hour like the Doctor does, but maybe he couldn't do that anymore. So the best way would be to just put him in this chair in front of the camera. We'll put this one glass pane over here so that he looks like he's in something, and we'll be sure we give him his lines.
Now, again, this is very minor, but again, considering other things that had been on TV by 1973, also the fact that he's confined to that tiny little monitor, whereas they could have put up a green screen, like almost a movie-size screen sort of thing, and then beamed or green screen that in so that he was much larger than that. That also somewhat diminished his performance, is that he was on the screen and there was actually a light shining right across part of his face. It was kind of hard to see him through that.
Yeah. So, now, and that's also interesting because they did do that on the Gallifrey set, because they had that very large image, and then they would cut to him and talk to him about what he was doing. So yeah, they could have done that, or even like, I don't know how well this would have worked, but if you could have put him in a corner, sort of done the same thing where it's like, okay, he's kind of on his own, but like maybe if you tried to like green or blue screen him into the TARDIS, that might be a little much though. So putting him on the screen would have been better.
I think basically what we're saying is we're not really criticizing the people who did this, but we're just so heartbroken that we didn't get to see more of him. I mean, it was so fun to see him, and yet so sad not to be able to see more of him.
Yeah. So. It's kind of a sort of like Carrie Fisher in Rise of Skywalker. It's like you work with what you have. They were able to have him and give his lines, but that's as much as they could do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, but that's the problem, is that if he was any better, then they could have had him in. But if he didn't have his health problems, we wouldn't have gotten the other two in the first place. Yeah. So it's just how it all worked out. So yeah. I wrote down the Brigadier. The Brigadier just not believing anything, which was funny. He always sort of doubts the Doctor, and I like that he can't believe for a second that there are two of them, and he's just like, oh, well, you must have used your infernal contraption and made yourself look like the other version again. I thought that was kind of funny. That and even like when it's like, oh, we must be in this antimatter universe that the Doctor was talking about. I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. We're on a beach somewhere, you know,
in Norfolk.
Yeah. Wait, this might cause an international incident. So that was funny. I wrote down the dark side, Omega's dark side. That they had to get a Pertwee fight in there
with the creature of the Black Lagoon. I mean, seriously, that was a little too. Again, for those of you who've ever seen that film, that looked a lot like the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, slowing it down, putting it in slow motion, didn't help.
It was slow. There was almost no sound, no music. It was just...
And his fight in Peladon was really good. You know?
Yeah, it was a pretty good fight.
So this one, not as good as the last one, in our opinion.
Yeah, it's... Well, and it's also interesting, too, because it's like, you know, the two of them are going to use their mental power to fight Omega, and then it cuts and it's like, okay, he's fighting the dark side, but it is just him. It's just the third Doctor doing that, but obviously it's because he's the one that goes in and has the fights. But yeah, that just happened. I guess that's another thing where it's like, okay, let's get an editor in here. We could cut some of that down, you know, I don't know. I wrote down the mask when they remove the mask and there's just nothing there. I did like that effect. That was pretty good. And it's like the only thing that's holding up this entire suit is just his will.
That whole Atlas and Hercules image, that was really good, and I wish they could have played that up a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great image, and you really do see, okay, so when he stops thinking about it, if for some reason he stops thinking about it, that entire place will simply blink out of existence. That could have been way more frightening.
Yeah, they could have, like, it might have been interesting if they had, like, part of that where he was starting to see, you know, that it's just his willpower that's holding everything up. If at that point, like, his concentration started to waver a bit and maybe some things were disappearing and then he has to bring it back and then, you know, things start appearing and then he turns to them and is like, now this will be passed to you. So that could have been interesting, but I did like that effect. You know, just take off the mask, there's nothing there, and you see the two of them behind him. So, and I wrote down the link, this telepathic link that the three Doctors share. That was interesting, and you know, they just sort of have these psychic conferences that Joe was basically saying, and this is how they come up with ideas, and it's like, I do kind of wish we had, which I guess we did get enough, you know, techno banter between the two of them, but it's like, I do kind of want to just hear all those thoughts racing at, you know, 10 million miles an hour, and so that was interesting, and especially like that effect, I guess the strobe effect of showing, and then showing all three of them was interesting. And it is also interesting that it's like, you know, you put all three of them together, you put their heads together and they come up with something great, but it's like, but this is still the same person, so shouldn't Pertwee be able to do that because he's the oldest of them?
Well, yes and no, but again, that goes back to, I know he remembers, but when you're in a specific situation like this, you know, sometimes, again, like with Omega, he, you know, if he's concentrating too much on one thing, then things start to slip out the other side. So they need the three of them to come together to say, all right, focus your mind. All three of us will now think of separate parts of what we need to do, and that's how we'll come up with a solution. Whereas one guy is thinking, I'm thinking so much on this that I'm forgetting about some other things, and the other guy says, no, wait a minute, but if you add what I'm thinking to what you're thinking and then add the first Doctor, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense. We have something that was accidentally transported here that is outside the antimatter field, and once that blows up, we're all safe.
Yeah. And it is also because, yes, the three of them are the same person, but they're such different personalities between the three of them. You know, even like, you know, you can kind of say, like, okay, well, we had Hartnell, he was the sort of grouchy old man, so Troughton was a bit more, happy, more goofy, and then in response to him, Pertwee kind of went back to what Hartnell was, but even still, the three of them are all distinct from each other, and so I like that. So we kind of have, like, the grumpy grandpa, the dandy, and the clown, as Hartnell put the two of them.
Yeah.
So that was interesting, and I guess that does make sense, the link between them. And then something that I didn't write down, but I remembered now, I really liked the effect of when Troughton appeared, because they were just holding the recorder, and then you just see from nowhere just his hand takes it, and then the rest of him just blinks in. I thought that was a really interesting effect, instead of honestly how he left, which was he just sort of faded out.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was interesting. And also when he says, like, oh, I see you've changed up my TARDIS, I don't like it. Which is also interesting because it's like, that means that there are some distinctions between the first three TARDISes. Hartnell's was a bit different, Troughton's is a bit different, and now we have Pertwee's. And it's like, yet, I mean, because we haven't seen too much of their TARDISes, like, no, these all kind of look the same. It's still just the white room,
Yeah.
But, I mean, that also kind of lends itself to what we watched last week, The Doctor's Wife, where it's like, the TARDIS archives all of these.
Yeah.
And at that point, for the 11th Doctor, she had archived about a dozen of them. So that's interesting to think that there are differences between each of their TARDISes. Enough to where it ticks off the second Doctor. So, because there was a mini episode in the Tennant era that brought back Peter Davison, and he kind of looked around and he was just like, oh, I see you changed the desktop theme. I don't like it. It's all brown. What happened to my white room, So,
but that's I've done that before. As a teacher, I was just thinking the other day. I'm now on like my 8th classroom, but every now and then, if I ever wandered into a room that I used to have and I see another teacher's in there, it's like, oh, you didn't do this correctly.
Yeah, this doesn't look right.
Yeah,
I had things specifically put where they were supposed to be.
Yes.
So yeah, it is sort of the same thing, and it's just interesting, just the interactions between the multiple Doctors, especially because 2 and 3 they kind of didn't get along. So, and that's just immediately it's like, oh, you changed everything. I don't like it, and I don't like you. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I wrote down for this episode. You got anything else?
No, I enjoyed it overall. Again, could have used some slight judicious editing, but fun storyline.
Yeah.
And again, you can't overemphasize the fact that you got to have that quirky humor, that looking at it, and just like you said, it's like, oh, yeah, I don't like it. But even the Brigadier is finally going, I've put up with this guy for a couple of years now, and I've got to say, this is getting too weird for me,
Yeah.
And when the sergeant says, sir, when we catalog it and there's something missing, where do we say it's gone? He just looks at me and goes, come along, Sergeant. It's just, let it go. We'll take it in stride.
Next week,
5 Doctors.
We will be moving on to the 5 Doctors. So it'll be the 20th anniversary, and we'll be, I guess technically, like this was technically a Pertwee episode. It just brought back the other 2. That will be a Peter Davison episode. And it makes me curious who his companions are at that time. I think this is technically around season 21-ish, so he might not have any of his same companions. Well, he won't have Adric, so we know that part for a fact.
Unless this happened before Adric blew himself up, accidentally, or on purpose.
I don't know. But it was interesting because, in this one, we just had Jo Grant, and she just tagged along with either Doctor.
In the strangely blue fur coat that she wore the entire 4 episodes.
Yeah.
Which, again, I don't remember her wearing anything similar to that the last time we saw her. And that did seem somewhat out of place.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm curious how many companions... honestly, I don't know if you can. Like, I would, write in, I dropped them off. They're doing something because it's like you have to concentrate on how all 5 of them are going to interact with each other.
But that, I mean, again, consider how fun that would be if the Hartnell replacement shows up with an Ian and Barbara and a Susan or whoever he had later, and they literally have not just the 5 doctors but like 20 different companions with them, and having them all trying to figure out what the heck is going on.
Yeah, like that would be difficult. Like, you bring back Joe Grant, you bring back Jamie and Victoria, Sarah Jane is in there too. I think that's asking a little too much. I think it'll be a miracle just to have 5 of them.
Yeah.
So,
all right, looking forward to it though.
Yeah. But yeah, that is pretty much that. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from Seventh Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who classic reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.